Misinformation is everywhere. It is not only a constant, prevalent truth, but a reminder that we can easily be swayed by the opinions of those with less than savory intentions or the ideals of someone who only wants our money and attention. And unfortunately, people will always be susceptible to lies, misinformation, and falsehoods. And as my dad always says, the process of quashing lies is less like a Herculean task and more akin to Sisyphus and his boulder. I'm Mr. J, and you are not immune to propaganda and misinformation. Now, when I say you are not immune to propaganda, I don't mean you're an idiot, a fool, a sucker, or whatever pronoun or adjective you want to use. What I mean is you need to check your biases. You need to practice hitting the brakes and asking yourself if these guys are being genuine and giving you a trusted source of information. You need to have enough skepticism walking into their content or world and be able to discern what is consistent and what is fabricated garbage they're peddling. And if you're still lost, look at it like this. Everyone has a truth that is built from the experiences of the world around them. Some people want to mold your truth as a means to their own ends, and sometimes those ends are nefarious. And media literacy is also a truth that some people will influence you to change your perception and understanding of media to match theirs. And I can help in ways, but you ultimately have to be the one to build your truth, to experience things and develop your own judgment, thoughts, and opinions. I can't always tell you what is and isn't propaganda and what is truth, because it's something we all have to work on together. And I'm not immune to it either. I listened to and believed so much misinformation when I was younger because I didn't know any better. My truth was a bunch of falsehoods and other people's agendas bound together. And for a good while, I didn't stop for a moment to question these people. It was only when I was faced with new concepts, listened to the information of other people, and genuinely asked myself, is any of this true? Do all these people want from me as my time and attention? What is it these guys actually provide to me? That was when I was able to gradually break free from the bad influences, to develop a better understanding of media and my media literacy. Propaganda is one of, and if not the easiest ways to lie and influence people because it feeds the narratives people want to hear. Well, this group is bad. Those individuals are disgusting. This person is evil and we should punish them. That religion believes in this. That fandom practices that. And so on. That's why propaganda and media-based propaganda is so effective. It's running with a narrative to make a community, a person, or a thing seem less desirable and wrong. It's easy to get swept up in the hate and lost in the lies and misinformation because tribalism tends to drive that. It's easier to make fun of a community when everything and everyone is seen from a black and white perspective instead of questioning what you read and hear, what you listen to and perceive around you. That is the importance of us being able to question one another, to disagree and argue, and to be able to critique, understand, and convey information and know whether or not someone has your best interests at heart or wants to use you to hurt others. Lies, misinformation, and agenda will always exist, and the desire to spread propaganda will always proliferate in the minds of those who have little room for empathy, patience, and understanding. You're not a bad person for falling for lies and propaganda. You're a bad person, though, when you continuously and repeatedly fall for propaganda because you couldn't be bothered to question yourself and the sources of information. Willful ignorance is worse than general ignorance because, at the very least, being completely ignorant of the messages and themes in media, the lessons the characters learn, and the basic structure of the world can be rectified. It's when someone tries to talk to you, but you shut them out and willingly omit information or exclude context and data that makes it hard to reason or vibe with you. Propaganda is enticing because you don't have to think. You don't have to critically engage with the subject material or media, and you don't have to question anything or be skeptical of the information. All you have to do is listen to the person or media and take what is said at face value. A couple of the most important things in media literacy is questioning sources and cross-referencing information. People that tote around that they're better than others for discussing the subject, or in whatever capacity, misconstrue, fabricate, or omit information in order to make their point or points sound correct, are people you should stay far away from. Having only one source of information, one viewpoint, and one line of thinking is how you build a biased, closed off, and ignorant outlook on media and the consumption and discussion of it. And while this isn't the last time I'll make a video on media literacy and anything surrounding it, consider this to be the first and most important video of the group. As much as people would like to say they aren't fooled by the words of others, yeah, no, sometimes you are going to be suckered into believing someone and their line of thinking. There are a good number of individuals in various media-centric communities that cover said media in a disingenuous or self-serving manner. And with all that said, the 4 examples of lower stakes, more niche instances of propaganda that I have, and I say niche because, let's face it, going into a giant, long-spanning deep dive of propaganda is for like a 3 to 8 hour video, and not niche micro-celebrities on the internet or any sort of media discussion, if you're catching what I'm throwing at you. And those instances are CC West going off on Mabel from Gravity Falls, CD calls infamous and poorly researched Steven Universe's Garbage and Here's Why, Based If True's Pizza Cake Saga, and Easy Peasy as a whole. For CC West, it's the fact that he went off on a fictional 12-year-old. He's also a predator, but that's not today's topic. Briefly explaining the situation from Gravity Falls, Mabel wanted to run away from her problems and hide away from the situation that Dipper might leave without her like any realistic child or twin would. Because kids don't understand major responsibilities, the changing of the world and dynamics around them, and that Dipper won't always be around and will eventually change and do his own thing. If Mabel was an adult, different story, folks, because a 30-year-old selfishly wanting to wrap themselves up in a fantasy where everything goes their way is different from a 12-year-old. That's the long and short of my frustration with West's bullheadedness. It's wasting energy getting mad at a fictional child overacting like a child. For CD Call, her Steven Universe video is not only a gigantic middle finger to well-mannered discussions on media, but also knowing now that she didn't initially watch the series without any distractions, any sort of intelligent dive into media. And I will admit, she wasn't the sole reason for Steven Universe's negative image online. She was unfortunately one of the larger voices people listened to when they wanted discourse on the series. Steven Universe has its problems, I won't disagree with everyone here, but unfortunately, they were severely overblown to the point that it did lasting damage to the image of the show. And I don't care that she made a follow-up, because it's just her doing damage control and PR to make herself look better and sound reasonable. Then there's Based If True's Pizza Cake videos, and I despise them because he's using Kiwi Farms as a reliable source of information and data. And I get that on the surface, him bashing on a controversial comic creator while also exacerbating the issue doesn't seem that big, but it's what he does in practice that makes him a source of propaganda. He's spreading niche propaganda because Based If True is utilizing a website that's known for having little to no scrutiny for its sources, no vetting process for information, and willingly allows anything through the door if it brings eyes to the site. He deserves any flack he gets because he can't be bothered to fire up the lump of protein upstairs and discern whether or not the things he's being told are false or misleading. And finally, Easy Peasy is a YouTuber who I have an actual grudge against, not only for believing his words and thoughts for a time in high school, but also because he doesn't practice good media literacy. To utilize MangaKamens' media literacy video in a better capacity than I did last time, A lot of what he tries to impress upon myself and all of you is that regardless of if you're speaking emotionally, intelligently, persuasively, or a combination of the three factors, you need to have reliable sources of information. The biggest example from here is Easy Peasy and his "From Inside the Animation Industry" video, where an unknown source gives Easy an insider scoop of the scandalous happenings in Disney and Cartoon Network that is ultimately just rumors, slander, lies, and bogus made-up information. We can't really take any of what is said here as truth because we have no idea who this mystery person is. We don't know the validity of their information or what their agenda may be. We don't know. And that's why it's misinformation. Easy can't verify his sources. He can't give us names or a face. He doesn't challenge the information he was given. He doesn't shoot an email to the source's former coworkers and cross-reference the information to see if his mystery source holds up. He's convincing people who won't take 15 minutes or so to verify his sources, or those that are easily swayed by his words to take what he's saying at face value and propagate it around. He's the worst kind of agenda-toting and grifting because he sounds reasonable and down-to-earth, but in reality, he's just spouting damaging rhetoric. He may sound composed and logical, but all he's really doing is hiding bigoted, harmful, and demeaning things under the guise of being a neutral party. He can't and won't give us a source of information that isn't catered to his agendas, that can't be easily misconstrued to fit his message, or leads back to a heavily biased set of data, because it would go against his narrative that the production staff behind Cartoon Network and Disney's animated shows are scummy. They may have their troubles and hang-ups, but that's the thing. I don't truly know, and neither does he. And I despise the damage these people, anyone online, did or does or will do to the images of certain media, because while there may be a nanoscopic nugget of truth to what these guys may have said, it's washed away by the fact that their egos override their ability to calmly and intelligently criticize or discuss media without throwing their agendas in. Ugh. But these four are nothing compared to political grifters. From my perspective, they are people who only want money, clout, and vindication from strangers on the internet and in real life, and they do it by trying to make you into someone who only hates. I don't have prominent examples, but I do have a list of people that will sadly grow as time goes on. And they are Movie Bob, The Quartering, Ben Shapiro, Nux Taku, Matt Walsh, Andrew Taint, Rev Says Desu, The Critical Drinker, Star Wars Theory, Cucker Tarlson, That One Guy Who Doesn't Shower, Andy Pants Gaming, and the world's biggest grifter, Sleepy Don. And the reason I don't have a specific example is because these guys share the same proverbial index cards of talking points, the same generic schlock that gets tossed around. It's woke, it's ugly, the minorities are encroaching on the white spaces, it's radical left-wing ideologies, it's pandering to the woke mind virus, it emasculates and feminizes the men of today, the whateverification has destroyed literature, gaming, art, TV shows, and/or movies. It's really hard to pick one person or topic because all these talking heads do is pick the biggest, most pointless culture war issue they can make bank off of, and keep feeding misinformation to their audience of maladjusted, mentally unwell adults who would burst into flames if they felt the touch of another human being or a fresh patch of grass. It's a bunch of nonsense worded in a way that makes their targeted audience angry about a vague and ever-shifting topic, and they do their best to keep them away from actual criticism, discussion, or real-world experiences because it would then jeopardize their funding and hate-driven community. They say what you want to hear so you won't challenge their opinions, their agenda, or their grift and pick it apart. And it's hard for others to break people out of that propaganda bubble because they don't want the truth. They want their truth, told by someone that agrees with them and will demonize or downplay those with good intentions or attempt to challenge their bubble out the door. And it all comes down to you. I could sit here and debate or discuss why these people are bad for you, why their opinions on media and life is propaganda, and why you should gravitate towards less toxic people and develop your own opinions, but it means very little if you aren't the one to do it yourself and engage with better people and better media on your own terms. Saying you're going to do and be better means nothing if you're easily swayed into believing misconstrued information about a series or something in animation and a fictional narrative crafted by someone to slander or defame another person. How are you going to combat people who always flatten the curve to suit their needs when discussing media they don't like? What can you do to deconstruct a person's false logic and targeted agendas towards fictional media without undermining your credibility and dignity? Is the other person acting in good faith, or are they trying to misinform and misconstrue the basic information in order to look good? What will you do to spread good media literacy and fight back against propaganda? And the list of questions goes on. I can't hold your hand and guide you through the landscape of media and build your media literacy for you. I won't always know what is and isn't propaganda from people or media. And I don't always have all the answers or know who's a good influence for your media literacy and who the terrible ones are. And it sure as hell won't be solved by AI. I mean, most of my examples from today have been stuff from before the generative AI garbage that tricks people on an hourly basis. I don't have the time or energy to deep dive into that actual dumpster fire. I don't want to be like Sisyphus and his boulder. If I thought things were bad before, then oh my god, we are absolutely screwed. Dealing with propaganda in a healthy way means checking your biases on the regular, doing your best to admit when you've said dehumanizing or bigoted things, and having a healthy level of skepticism and questioning towards critics, commentators, and influencers. People are always going to lie, spread false information, present biased narratives, and misconstrued points. And it can happen purposefully, willingly, accidentally, dogmatically, or whatever word matches ending in "ly." And fighting against it, being better than those that propagate misinformation and propaganda, is always an uphill battle. And that's because I can tell you how the sausage is made, but I can't make you like it or eat it. That's up for you to decide. I'm Mr. J, and did you know that groups of gorillas actually live in a hive-like structure similar to bees? Yeah, it's true. They have a queen who rules over the scouts who go out in search of food.